I thought wouldn't it have been brilliant if he'd just taken his legs off and then left him there.
Welcome back to Modern Horror Stories podcast, and this week we are reviewing Terrifier 3, a movie released this year, 2024, and directed by Damien Leone. So let's show our scores, and I'm 3 this week.
Gone for 7.5.
And I've gone for 2.
Ooh. Who wants to give this one a synopsis?
Not really. I can give you a little lead up to it though. So
Of all the Terrifiers so far, this one probably needs a synopsis.
yes. So I mean, it takes place after the second Terrifier film, which is good because it is one of the least complicated things to think about. At least they've stuck to the chronology of this. And Art the Clown is back. His victims from the previous film who have, well, not victims, but the survivors from the previous films are the new main character. We have our lead who is utterly traumatized by the events of the previous film. She is living with her cousins, including a very sweet little cousin who is, I think, one of the highlights of the film to me, but I don't know if you guys will disagree. And it essentially follows her as she tries to deal with the kind of the aftermath of this, and at the same time wondering whether Art the Clown is going to return.
So the last time we had a film in which one person really liked the film and the other two didn't like it was You're Next. And I remember I had the experience, I think I went first saying how much I liked it, and then you two trashed me by saying
I'm looking forward to this then, yeah.
So I thought we'd switch it around this time, and maybe Jamie and I will go first and trash the film, and you try and save it.
Great.
Yeah?
I mean, I just want to say, my 7.5 that I've done for these 3 films, they're not based on... They are my subjective... They're very much how much I enjoyed the film, as opposed to what I felt the quality of the film was. And I think there's that distinction to be made there. But yes, you guys go first, you trash it, and then I'll do my best to redeem it.
So in a way, we've all perceived this trilogy slightly different, because I didn't like the first one and liked the second one, and then I've dropped back down. Whereas you two kind of like the first one. And for me, the first one I just thought was pure gore. The second one added just enough story to keep me engaged with the characters. This one has started to try to expand the universe, and for me it doesn't work at all. And so I was less engaged in this one than the first one. I quite like the final scene with him. Oh, this can be spoilers, everyone. I do think it's a quality product. If you like gore and carnage and savagery, there is some craft here, but it wasn't. I couldn't live through that. It's not my type of film, as I've said for all the films in this trilogy. It's not my type of film, and this one, the story just didn't engage me. They expanded on the universe, but it didn't really make sense for me. All the expansion. They did a cardinal sin for me as well in this movie. The number one sin in this movie is they had a killing in which Art the Clown wasn't the main killer. He took a back seat in that scene near the end where the disfigured lady, she had all the dialogue and she was kind of spelling it out for people, and Art the Clown was taking a back seat. And I thought, if I'm going to watch this movie, I want Art the Clown front and center all the time in terms of killing. It also, another sin for me was it lost the pale little girl, who I thought was a wonderful addition to the second film, really improved it for me. I think the sidekick this time just doesn't work so well. I like the fact that the sidekick in the first one didn't speak as well, apart from that magic moment where she replicates someone's voice. I like the fact that we were both silent. But now we have this talking partner in the duo. And in the end, it didn't make any sense to me. I quite like the final scene with him getting on the bus. Oh, there's going to be spoilers, everyone.
Well, I tell you what, Will, I reckon Jamie has the editing skills to be able to put that little bit just before everything.
Yeah.
And the signature kill in this movie, I think, is probably the shower scene, and it was just way too much for me. I was looking through the fingers. It was almost like a parallel for the signature kill in the first film because of the kind of
The dissection element of it.
dissection element of it. And yes, it was painful. It was super painful for me to watch, but I think a lot of people, including a couple who was sitting behind me in the cinema, absolutely loved that scene. So whilst this film was not a great film for me, there's definitely an audience for it, and the people I was with quite enjoyed it.
So, I mean, speaking of the audience for it, before I went to see this film, I went for a coffee with a friend of mine. And I said, look, I've got to leave at 2. It's the only showing I can find of Terrifier 3 that's not at midnight. And she said, oh, I'll come along as well. And I'm like, it's going to be very gory. I've seen the first 2 of these films. She says, well, I've seen Grey's Anatomy. And I think, I tell her it's good. I mean, the thing about Grey's Anatomy, as gory as it can get, those people don't want to cause harm. So yes, it was a bit of a rude awakening. And she came out of the film and said, God, I hated that, and I really enjoyed it. And those sort of, and I completely understand that these 2 completely separate reactions to the film, which I completely agree I did have as well. You were talking about the signature kill. And I completely agree it was the signature kill, but it was by no means the best kill in the film, I thought. For me, in fact, I thought it was maybe the best scene in the film for me, and it was less gory than that one. It was with a Santa Claus. And Art the Clown, he is trying to engage with this Santa Claus. And I thought there was this really wonderful moment there where the Santa Claus, he goes, look, we're both entertainers. You understand, you get it, right? And I thought for a moment there, wouldn't it have been absolutely brilliant if Art the Clown had just not necessarily killed him, maybe mutilated him a fair bit? Because I always think those are the moments in these films that I find more horrifying. The idea of, in that first film, this character who returns in the third film has her face eaten off. And that sort of, to me, is more horrifying, the surviving through it. So as much as I love the use of, was it liquid nitrogen on the Santa Claus, I thought, wouldn't it have been brilliant if he'd just taken his legs off and then left him there? So yes, I think maybe one of my issues with the Terrifier films is they create something terrifying by going as far as they possibly can. Whereas occasionally you could be more terrified by simply letting the imagination run its course. So yes, I think I do completely understand all of your issues with the film. And to be honest, I agree with almost all of them. But it didn't affect my enjoyment of the film whatsoever.
So as it happens, we've done a kind of sandwich. We've had bad review, good review, and now, Jamie, it's for you to give a bad review.
Yes. Before I do, I want to echo what Alex said earlier about that my scores don't necessarily reflect quality, because there is a lot of really fantastic quality filmmaking in Terrifier 3. It just so happens that I absolutely hated the film. And it's the only film of all the films we've reviewed so far that I actively wanted to stop watching. And the only reason I finished the film was because I knew we were doing this video. Previously, there's been films that I haven't enjoyed, but I've enjoyed the juiciness of what I don't enjoy about it. So like either the politics of it, or the filmmaking of it, or the storytelling of it, whatever it is, there's some nugget of it that I'm quite intrigued by or enjoy analyzing. Whereas in this film, I just didn't want to watch it again, even to get some more analysis out of it. So I didn't watch it again.
What for you distinguished it from the first two films? Because I think I can't imagine having watched those first two films and then suddenly the third film being like, oh, I can't cope with that, just out of interest.
I know what you mean. Like it in terms of like a blow by blow, it's fairly similar, as you say. Like the pacing is quite similar. It's lots of art going around killing, but it's there was a couple of things that took me out of it. One of the things was that David Howard Thornton is amazing and he's absolutely brilliant as Art the Clown. But there was a few moments in this film where I saw David Howard Thornton, the actor, and not Art the Clown. Whereas in the first two films, there wasn't a millisecond where I saw anything but Art the Clown on the screen. Similarly to Dave, like I felt it was a shame to miss out on the second clown returning. And also, one of the most powerful things about Art the Clown is his silence. So then to have Vic come along and just be the voice of his spirit or something, it was like that felt it lost a lot in that. And then there was also the time jumping that we saw a bit, and then it went back to 5 years earlier. And I don't think that was necessarily necessary, or it could have been done a different way. And also in that 5 years earlier bit, there was some good moments, but overall, that whole section felt a bit like an art house film, and art house films tend to make me feel a bit queasy. So that wasn't a great start to the film. And also the way the film starts, it gives so much promise, and then it doesn't deliver on it. So I think maybe if it hadn't had that promise at the beginning, I wouldn't be as bothered. But it starts with we don't see Art's face. We see his feet and the back of him and stuff as he's being a Santa Claus in someone's house. And this child is really excited to see Santa. And it turns out Santa is Art the Clown. And he goes around and massacres the family. And I thought, wow, I can't wait for a whole film of Art the Clown being Santa Claus. And then that is not what we get delivered. We get a couple of scenes with Art the Clown as Santa Claus, and that's it. Which I think was a shame. And then even the scenes, there's a lot of reality in this film. Like the tensions and the emotions and the drama, I think are all played super real. And then other stuff is just played purely for laughs or effect or I don't know what, but it's completely ridiculous and bombastic. Like when Art the Clown is in the department store. Great idea, great setup for a scene. Really love the idea, but how are like 20 mums and dads not noticing their kids running off? Like, I get like maybe one or two might, but 20 of them? I don't know. It just that didn't read as very real. And then all of the lore that's delivered by exposition, I completely switched off during her speech.
I totally agree with everything you were just saying, and you reminded me of like the number one thing I think, which is why I don't like this film, and that is it felt like Art the Clown had intruded into a normal horror film, and for me, he didn't belong there. He didn't belong in a film with kind of real characters. The sort of characters you might, I mean, when I say real, I mean the sort of characters you get in a typical horror film like Scream. He didn't belong in that kind of film. I mean, the first Terrifier has very little character development, but he sits quite nicely in there.
See, yes, I was just going to pick you up on that, on the basis that when we did the first Terrifier video, our big issue was that we didn't have those characters. In fact, I think I probably mentioned Scream specifically. I think I mentioned Nightmare on Elm Street. But those kind of Wes Craven characters where it's young people and they have these genuine relationships with each other. So I don't want to criticize for that reason, because I did say just a few weeks ago I'd like some character stuff. But what I was going to say was the cousin, the niece. I'm pretty sure she was a cousin, but that character, I thought, finally, I like I like one of these characters. I like a character in this film in a genuine way. Because I didn't particularly like Sienna in the last film. I didn't have any particular issue with her, but I didn't particularly like her either. Whereas as soon as we were introduced that child, I think it's a bit like Dave with dogs being murdered in horror films. Please don't kill that child. Please, please don't kill that child. And also the other little bit of defense that I'm going to give this film is that no, it's completely gone from my mind.
While you're thinking of it, as we've seen more of the trilogy, it kind of allows you to ruminate on what makes it work or it doesn't work. And after watching the first one, I thought this needs more characters, but now I realize it doesn't need more characters. And I would have been happily seeing a whole film of Art coming down the chimney as Santa Claus to random houses and dealing out carnage. That would have been a slightly more palatable movie for me. And as we've said before, and I think you agreed, Alex, that trying to perfect the lore for this film is a mistake.
It's impossible.
Yeah.
I mean, because it's such a mess. It's all over the place. I still don't understand the whole dad stuff. And that's 3 films in, I don't understand the dad stuff. I don't understand the magic sword stuff. I mean, the magic sword has absolutely no place in these films, I think. But it seems very, very odd to me, some of those elements. And I hope in the next film, they decide to blow up the lore in the most bombastic way possible. They just go, right, yeah, Art's the Antichrist now, and that's it. That's all you need to know. Or just anything like that. It's so frustrating because I enjoy these films so much, and at the same time, know that they are so totally imperfect.
I think they should treat Art the Count almost like they used to treat James Bond. Because back in the kind of Sean Connery, Roger Moore days, there was no link between the films. They didn't try to create an ongoing narrative. I know they do. I know they tried to do that with Daniel Craig. But I would quite happily see Art the Count just dropped into a different scenario every movie. Terminator, Terrifier 4, Art the Clown goes to France or something like that.
Yes, there we go. I mean, he's a
Totally happy.
mime. He's perfect for France. That would be excellent. That would be fantastic. Okay, here's the plot for the next film. He goes to Lecoq in Paris and he trains as a clown.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it. That's it. He's in drama school and he's slowly murdering the worst clowns.
Oh my
Until
God.
I don't know. There's something that. But I mean, when we were doing the review for Terrifier 2, we had this idea. We were saying, I can't remember which one of you said, but the idea there are these in Marvel and DC, there are these kind of other universes. You get, Marvel 1602 or something like that. Neil Gaiman one. And there are all these kind of ways of doing Art the Clown. And because he doesn't speak, he doesn't need to fit into any place or time. So yes, Terrifier 4, I think that's the idea.
Oh my
Terrifier
God.
at Lecoq.
That would be incredible.
I'll email that idea over to Damien Leone and see what he says.
Please do.
Getting back to the realism of it, something that bothered me in the second film, but I could live with it, was the fact that this character, he's done these murders which seem to be kind of like hugely newsworthy. Everyone knows who this character is, to the point where they could go to Halloween parties dressed as this character. But despite that, he can just walk around this city and he walks into a store and no one just seems to bother that much. And at the end, he just gets on a bus and despite, like I say, he's responsible for these famous murders that everyone seems to know about. He just gets on. One of my favorite parts, actually, I mean, there were moments that I liked. I did quite like him traveling on the tube with the head of the person he killed while he went to reclaim his own head.
Yes.
I kind of liked that scene. It got me up to 3 out of 10.
I tell you what, I remember what my other defense was now.
Mhm.
It was, I'm pretty sure there is in this film the first murder in the Terrifier series that sort of abides by those laws of when you say, "Oh, I just wish I could see Jason," or "I just wish I knew what it was like to meet Freddy." As soon as that happens, that's it. There's kind of a sense of universal justice, which I really, really love in horror films. And there is usually absolutely none of that in the Terrifier franchise. It is just bleak and brutal and nasty. And I really like the shower scene because it felt earned. It felt like this girl had been insensitive to Sienna, and in its own twisted horror logic sort of way, that murder made perfect sense to me.
I've got one question before we wrap this up, and that is, this sequel does something quite unusual for sequels. In that, for example, between the two of the recent Halloweens, I think it's of the three reboots recently, I think it's the first and the second reboot. Although the films were made years apart, they actually continue like the next day. But this one's done something really unusual in that, although only 2 years have passed, they make it 5 years in the movie. They've stretched it out, and
I hadn't thought of that.
I
So
wondered. I've got a theory of why it might have been done, but
Yep.
did you guys think about that?
No, but I want to hear your theory now.
So my theory is, I wonder if Jonathan is so much taller in this film that he looks like he's aged 5 years when he's only supposed to. Like, I mean, if he's grown like 6 inches or something, I don't know. Maybe it's just implausible that this film continues immediately after the next one, because in one scene it does. In one scene is exactly after the last film where they collect the head, but the rest of the film is 5 years later. And I can only imagine that a couple of the characters maybe just look a bit older, or I just couldn't put my finger on what it might
Maybe
be.
you're right. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's possible the actor played Jonathan was taller, but on the other hand, the first one, the second film I watched on a TV screen, and the third one I watched in the cinema. So maybe he just looks taller, that big on the IMAX screen. Who knows? But I think you're probably right, actually. So does that, unless they just screwed up the timelines in the first two films in the way that the X-Men films do? But I can't think how they would have done that. So that's an interesting one, though. Does it mean that Terrifier 3 is set in the future?
Where it feels like we're in the future now.
It does. In a horrible sort of way. Yeah.
So on that note,
Sorry,
Jamie, do you have something to say?
I just had a thought. Like, what if there was a film without the clown running for president, and he gets
Oh, that's
gets a lot of
good. Yeah.
votes? and-
Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to do a little short of just all the different Terrifier films we can come up with.
Yes.
So that one we call Mr. Terrifier Goes to Washington. I mean, there are hundreds of these. I reckon we could just one afternoon we just write down the word Terrifier on a piece of paper over and over again, and just give it loads of sequels.
Amazing.
Brilliant idea. So on that note, we're going to wrap up. Join us tomorrow for three ways that we're going to make Terrifier 3 a little bit better. And then join us maybe the following week, and we'll give you all the possible sequels that Terrifier may have. So see you soon. I think Art going to Lecoq would be an amazing film.
That
Yeah,
was
I think it would.
incredible.
He turns up on day one, doesn't say anything, and the tutors just love him.
Yes,
He's
yeah.
a character.
Nothing he does. The teacher's like, "Oh my gosh, the way you killed that person."
Yes,
Amazing.
yeah.
Crikey.
Wow.
Put us in charge of the franchise. That's what I say.
Yeah,
Wow.
100%.
Yeah.